Before we begin, I want to thank Nicole Stewart for leading on an important initiative, and all our city councilors for contributing toward a fundraiser that we did. We raised $116,000 for the Interfaith Food Shuttle, Oak City Cares, and the North Carolina Restaurant Relief Fund. I could not be prouder of the way our community rallied behind all of us, and certainly the help from a $50,000 anonymous donor did not hurt. That person I want to thank profusely for just being the type of person who will give without expecting anything in return. And our community has really come together around this. Councilor Stewart, do you want to say anything?
Just thank each and every single one of my fellow council members and mayor so much for going on this journey with me and encouraging the rest of our community to give back in this great time of need. So thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we are going to start. Before we start, I just want to remind everyone that we raise your hand. I will call on you. This makes it, makes it a little more challenging. But in order to keep order during the meeting, this will help us. And what we're going to do is allow people to go through the presentations, and then we can ask questions after. That will provide more continuity. We're also going to have to provide direction on two issues. So I know everybody has read the agenda, is prepared, so let's get going. The first item on the agenda is the Federal CARES Act funding and substantial amendment to annual action plan. Larry Jarvis is going to review that for us. Thank you, Larry.
Good afternoon, Larry Jarvis, Housing and Neighborhoods. As the mayor indicated, we have two actions for you this afternoon. The first is for you to set a public hearing for May 5th on a substantial amendment to the current annual action plan. That's a requirement to access and be able to use the funds appropriated under the CARES Act. The second thing, we're asking for direction on the proposed use of those funds in general terms, so we can go ahead and start the process of soliciting through letters of interest or other mechanisms nonprofit providers to provide these services. As the background information indicates, with the Emergency Solutions Grant, we're recommending a focus on prevention, a secondary focus on rapid rehousing, and of course the ESG funds are restricted to households with 30% of the area median income or less. With the CDBG funds, we're recommending a similar focus on prevention, going up to 50% of the area median income, and there the assistance would be on rent, mortgage assistance, utilities, what have you. Also recognizing that this is a pretty heavy lift for our nonprofit community, we would also suggest soliciting public services to provide operating support to our nonprofit providers, because again, this is a heavy lift we're asking them to partner with. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about either of those.
Do we have any questions? Okay, Councilor Branch, then Councilor Stewart.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for working with this and pulling together the Federal CARES Act funding. And I was going to make a motion, but I'll let other councilors speak before I do that, if some had some comments.
Councilor Stewart.
Thank you, Larry. One of the things I'd like us to focus on is, as all of this federal money is coming down, what are the areas where there's needs that aren't being met yet with these funds? So if we can make sure that we are reaching those individuals with these pots of money, I think that would be crucial. And one of the things a couple of us had talked about, I know Mayor, you have an interest in this, and Mr. Martin, making sure that we're reaching our undocumented community. I appreciate the note in the memo about these funds are not keeping those folks out. But if there's more we can do specifically with these funds to reach out community, I think that would be great.
We're doing a lot of listening.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hey, Councilor Martin?
Thank you. And also thank you to Larry and the team for shepherding us through this process. Councilor Stewart said, we've seen a lot of
I think his Wi-Fi is failing him.
We lost Councilor Martin. I think what he was going to say is echoing what Councilor Stewart said regarding our undocumented and immigrant community, ensuring that we pay attention and are engaging them, looking at ways to assist. So I think you got that message, Larry, so thank you. Councilor Branch, did you want to make?
Yeah, I wanted to move, to adopt the recommendations from staff to approve the proposed programs areas and authorize staff to administer the CARES Act funding, as well as set the public hearing for May 5th for these items as required.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilor Cox seconded that, clerk. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. Councilor Martin, you are back now. We lost you temporarily. We just voted to approve this, and what I basically said was that I thought you were going to echo Councilor Stewart's concerns about our undocumented and immigrant communities. So that message has been delivered. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have an item that really personally important to me and also important to our council members. You know, we as a city are not responsible for the health response to COVID, but there are things we still can do. The county is responsible for public health issues. The things we can do and what we have focused on is our small business community and how we can assist them in these trying times, and also how we can aid and help our homeless community. The next item is focused on our small business community. And Veronica Creech is going to review the small business assistance program that she and Jim Green and others have developed. I want to thank you first off for treating this with the sense of urgency that I felt and other council members felt, and getting this done. You've come up with a great program, and I'm really excited to move this forward. So Veronica, if you could kind of guide us through this, as I mentioned earlier, we'll let her go through the presentation. And then at the end, she's going to ask for guidance on some issues. But before that, if you have any specific questions, I know Councilor Cox does, but if there's any specific questions, remember, raise your hand, I'll call on you, and then we'll get to providing direction. Okay? All right, Veronica.
Mayor, Council, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Creech, I head up the Office of Economic Development and Innovation here at the City of Raleigh. This is my privilege to represent the team that pulled together this good thinking. We did have a cross-departmental team, including Housing and Neighborhoods, the Finance Office, the Office of Budget, our team. We also, as always, with economic development, consult with our partner organizations, nonprofits, and other economic development groups. What we're excited to present to you or talk with you through today are options for small business assistance during COVID-19. The news continues to get absolutely worse the more that we hear about the post-CARES Act funds that are hitting the streets. And the bottom line is those dollars are not seeing or making their way to Main Street. Mom and pop businesses, what some folks call the cultural soul of Raleigh. The impact of COVID-19 on Raleigh small business community and the residents who are dependent on these businesses for employment and their livelihood has been significant. While Raleigh-specific numbers are still emerging, national small business surveys estimate that about 25% of our small businesses are in risk of never opening again post-COVID-19. And that over 56% of small businesses have seen revenue decreases of more than 75%. What these numbers inspired us to look into is what are some options that you can consider if you so choose to support or take some action in supporting our small businesses. We benchmark nationally what some of our other cities of our same size doing, and across the state, what are other communities doing. And one thing that we were pretty solid on is there's some really smart stuff and very supportive efforts taking place that the city probably didn't want to start our own effort, but rather take our resources and seed continuing some infrastructure that's already in place supporting our small businesses. So after a pretty exhaustive review of potential organizations, the team landed on 2 partners that we could partner with to support small businesses in a pretty quick, expedited way. So the Wake Tech Community College, through their innovation arm, led by Katie Gale, she and her team have a program that we partner with already, Launch Raleigh. And of course, Wake Tech has the Small Business Center. So their program is supporting looking at applicants who've gone through the Small Business Center or Launch Raleigh, and supporting the micro businesses or businesses 14 employees or less. That's one way that we can make sure we do hit our person-to-person businesses, our really small businesses, and have some vetting mechanism for knowing how solid those organizations are. The second organization that we've sat down and talked at length with is the Carolina Small Business Development Fund. Kevin Dick is the new CEO, president there, and he is real excited about the work that they're doing already to support small businesses. And they're managing the Mecklenburg County Small Business Support Program. We did outline in your memo vetting mechanisms both for the organizations, what we were looking for and who we wanted to work with, and potential vetting mechanisms for applicants who may qualify for any kind of a support program that you may want to advance. Both organizations have the infrastructure in place to begin rolling out applications within a week and then funding the following week, which seemed a pretty important priority to get support rolling quicker. There are 3 policy guidance areas that we would want to hear your feedback on. So with that high-level overview of the 2 potential partners, what we're aiming to achieve, I'll pause there and see if you have questions before we go back and visit the policy areas that we're seeking your guidance on.
Councillor Cox?
So one question that has come to me is, are sole proprietorships being considered for this, or does a business have to have employees?
Sole proprietors do fall under the micro businesses. We've not, we didn't opt out a sole proprietor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before Veronica continues? Okay, Veronica, the floor is yours again.
Yes, ma'am. So some of the policy considerations that we're seeking your guidance on relates to the number and size of support, basically looking for quantity versus impact of the grant. We've seen grant programs from $5,000 to $10,000 in similar programs as this. One option would be, which is tangible, measurable, provable, is if you considered an applicant's request of 2 months rent or $10,000, whichever's lower, is one way to look at that. So in that spirit, what would your guidance be in the number and size of support.
Well, I would think that what I've seen other funds doing of comparable size to our city is up to $10,000. So
Yeah.
if there's any consensus on that, Councilor Branch?
No, I was gonna say, I think up to 10,000, capping at 10,000 is good. That way we also get a good cross-section of businesses that we're able to assist and support.
Councilor Cox?
Aside from rent, are there other categories of expenditure that the money would be used for?
Again, up to your guidance. We were going to follow the limitations of the guidelines of our partners, and there are no guidelines limiting that. The rent is one way to substantiate the need.
One thing I would like to make sure, Veronica, is there be one exception how people can use this, and that would be to pay themselves. It should be, like in my mind, it should be used to keep their business running, for business-related expenses. Just a thought that I'm throwing out there. Others might disagree, but that's why we're having this discussion. Councilor Melton.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this guidance fits neatly in the category we're discussing, but in a general sense, I think it's really important that we are providing the support to the businesses to get them sort of like a bridge, to get them to the other side. I think it's extremely important that our small businesses, especially our restaurant hospitalities, privately owned restaurants and bars, are able to reopen after this, because they employ so many individuals, from the servers to the cooks and chefs and bartenders, folks that clean and maintain the restaurant. And we need jobs to be there for folks who lost them. We need those jobs to be there for them to return to them. So whatever we do, I think it needs to be of a sufficient amount to get them to the other side of this pandemic. And I would hope that they would be able to use it in a way that they think is best to make sure that their doors can reopen. And that's really the only thoughts I have on it.
Anybody else? Councilor Knight?
Excuse me. Veronica, you might have mentioned this. Is there a timing? How quickly do we think we can get these funds out the door to applicants?
Oh, yes, sir. So both organizations, the programs are already set up. They've already run funds through their programs. One organization would need about 5 days to put a Raleigh-specific portal online, and then so a week to get the portal online, and then a week to begin seeing the dollars hit the street. Both organizations felt within 2 weeks was very reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
One piece about that being quick about getting the funds to the street would be the least number of vetting questions or criteria that the organization was to vet for. So point of clarification, I heard both from Councilor Melton, get the funds out, let the organizations deploy them where they need it to, get them on the best track for bridge funding to be able to open after this event. But I also heard not to pay self. Point of clarification, Mayor, did you mean not to pay the owner or not to pay staff?
Not to pay the owner. Like, in other words, and I don't think we need to vet for that, Veronica. I think that should just be part of the rules. So when we put up the rules that say, hey, here are the guidelines, that is spelled out for the applicant.
Okay. Yeah.
Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Is that, Councilor Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, agree with everything that was just said. And I've had an idea that I've just been rolling around in my head, and I don't know that there's an answer to this at present, but something just for Veronica and her team and the partners to think about as they roll this out. And I don't know that this is something we can put in the application. As we think about the the longevity of our businesses and especially our minority-owned businesses. I'm curious if there's a way for us to ensure that some of the minority-owned businesses get have access to this and are really taken care of in this moment. We have so few in the city, and I think that so many of our partners have worked to ensure that they have the resources that they need. And so anything that we could do to make sure that our minority-owned businesses have access to this fund, know how to use it, and are successful in receiving the funds, I would be really happy to see that happen. Again, I'm not sure that we can legislate that from this end, but I think that Veronica and your team and the partners, if you all could think about ways to kind of enact that on the other end, that would make me really happy, and I think would help all of us in the long run.
So, Councilor Martin.
And others, thank you. We absolutely do, and we built in the marketing piece in the memo, but we also have partners who specifically support our minority-owned businesses who we will turn to help us promote this opportunity.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification too, Launch Raleigh, their focus is minority and women-owned businesses. We have been working with them approximately 4 years now. They have a partnership with Shaw and other members of the community, have been very active in Southeast Raleigh. And the fund was started at Wake Tech specifically to help these businesses who normally might not have access to this type of assistance. So Katie is very entrenched in the community, and I think that was a brilliant choice of a partner because it does help us meet that need.
Sure.
So thank you. Councilor Branch.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing with Carolina Small Business. They've also operated in that realm. So I think, this is a good fit to make sure that those businesses that are usually underserved, that are struggling now, as they say in some areas, on one side of the community catches a cold, the other side catches pneumonia. So I think this is a way for us to help bridge that gap and move forward. So I feel comfortable with the partners that we've selected.
Okay, so our next, Councilor Buffkin, did you just raise your hand?
I did. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Just a brief question. I agree that this is a really urgent moment. We need to get the money out there as quickly as possible to have an impact and support our small businesses. I don't want to take our eye off being good stewards of the taxpayers' money, though. And I think I see that in partnering with these organizations that already have process and procedures in place, we have a high degree of confidence that the money is going to be spent wisely, and what people apply for and spend the money on will be the same thing. Are those, Veronica, you're confident those procedures are in place?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, so we really vetted not just the different organizations, but we looked at the procedures that are underway now, again, for Mecklenburg County and other groups that are using both of these partners. And we're really pleased to see the infrastructure, the thoroughness. What's so smart about the Wake Tech program, they're only inviting applicants who have gone through the Wake Tech Small Business Center for business counseling and or have graduated the Launch Raleigh program. So these are businesses that have gotten great consultation and a good relationship with Katie and her team.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have consensus on the up to $10,000 grant, just in the rules that you can't use it to pay yourself. Must be used for other business expenses, but we're not going to tell them what those expenses are. So, okay. What's the next item that you need guidance on, Veronica?
Okay, so the number of businesses supported under one owner. So a policy question for council is the number of businesses that a business owner could request support for.
Does anybody have a comment on this? Councilor Cox and then Councilor Stewart.
Yeah, because the need is so great, I really think we should limit this to one grant per business, I think. So if a person owns multiple businesses, I think they would have to decide, they would get their grant and they'd have to decide either how to split it amongst those businesses or dedicate it to a particular business.
Counselor Stewart?
I agree. And I don't know if it's clear just to say one grant per LLC or business owner, but I totally agree with Mr. Cox.
Yeah.
Counselor Branch?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it should probably say business owner, because you can have multiple businesses under the same owner. So if you say just business, then they can say, hey, we have A, B, and C businesses, but they're still the same business owner. So I think we just have to make sure that our partners vet the number of business owners.
I would concur with that. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, I think you've gotten your guidance on that. Veronica, what's next?
Absolutely, thank you. And then the last one is reaching intended businesses. And this is absolutely up to you to think through the types of businesses you're trying to reach. At the end of the day, who do you want to see that we have really leaned in to bridge that support? What our national statistics and national outcomes for the federal funding is showing, again, mom and pop, Main Street, the funds are not making it to the heart of the community. It's not making it to our cultural soul. Rather, it's stopping along the way. One way to consider how the funds make it to your intended audience would be a revenue cap. We've put a starting point here of $3 million. That's for discussion. That's to inspire the conversation. But we'd love to hear your guidance and thoughts on the strategy for reaching the intended businesses.
Counselor Stewart, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think I really appreciate the work staff has done to kind of look and see what folks are doing and what cities are doing across the nation. I think 3 million might be a little high and would like to come down from that to maybe 2.5. I think that will get at the size of the business we're thinking about with that 49 employee cap. And I also really like it coupled with the 25% revenue loss. So making sure we are getting those small businesses who've really been impacted by COVID. So I think those two things together make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Counselor Buffkin, but just 1 minute. I just wanted to reiterate something. This small business fund that will be run from, or the grant fund that will be run out of the Small Business Development Center will be for employees, 49 or fewer employees. The Wake Tech Fund is 14 or fewer employees. The 49 number, just for those who are listening, came about because that is that's the policy or the guidance that we use through our Economic Development Office. We define small business as businesses with 49 or fewer employees. So for the sake of consistency, that was the number that we selected. And then I just wanted to reiterate, the Wake Tech is for the micro businesses 14 and under. Again, you had a comment or a question regarding the revenue cap.
Well, yes, not specific to the revenue cap, but on the broader question of making sure we're reaching the folks that are intended to benefit from this. My question is, have we been able to incorporate any kind of geographic diversity element in reaching the businesses so that this support is spread in an equitable way across the city?
It's not inherently built in. If that is something you would like for us to consider, we would need guidance around what would that look like. North, south, east, west. We have 12 business alliances, districts. What would, and again, the more vetting mechanisms we put in place, the longer this will take, and how would we substantiate, not opposed to it, but please just kind of talk that through and just give us some guidance on what you would think that would look like.
Sure. And I don't know that I have the right answer on how to do it, but I would like to avoid a situation where, say, 6 months or a year from now, we find out that the support for small businesses flowed only to businesses in a limited part of the city. So, working with the business alliances would certainly be a good option. The old city council district model might be an option. I'm sure you all can figure it out better and faster than I could, but I would like to see that taken into consideration.
Patrick, what if, I'm concerned that if we put these vetting, this vetting in place, it's going to take us another week or maybe longer before we can get money flowing. What I would recommend is more of a marketing approach, where our alliances are doing the outreach, so it's geographically diverse.
Yeah, I actually like that idea, Mayor and Councilman Buffkin. I think too, you may have parts of the city that may not meet that threshold of need, so they wouldn't qualify. That doesn't necessarily mean that no one applied. So we have to keep that in mind as well, because some zip codes, the pockets are a little thicker than others.
We can ask our partner to share back with us where the applications came from to kind of be a comparison of did our marketing work, did our marketing reach intended audiences. That's something we'd be curious to know as well.
Yep, I like that.
Councilor Buffkin, are you good with that?
Yes, I think so. I'm sure you all can strike the right balance between getting the money out quickly and being fair to the entire community.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any additional comments on the 2.5 maximum revenue? Is that consensus? Can we have a thumbs up? Consensus? Okay. Veronica, 2.5 million?
Yes, ma'am. And those were our policy considerations that we needed your guidance on.
So there was one item that I had noted from your memo, and that was a 25% loss in revenue. So in order to be eligible, a company would have to had experienced at least a 25% loss in revenue. Is that incorporated into the criteria?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Those of the, definitely the Carolina Small Business, that's a part of their vetting mechanism already.
Okay. And one other item that I would like to see just listed in the criteria, again, I don't want to hold things up, but if a company owes back taxes, I don't think they should be eligible for this. And I think that should just be listed in the criteria up front so people know if they haven't paid their back taxes. First off, that's an indicator of issues. But I just would like that listed again on the website so people can see what that criteria is.
Very good. Sure will.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, is there anything else outstanding? Any city comments from city councilors? Any additional issues or concerns? Councilor Stewart?
I just want to echo, Mayor, your earlier comments about being grateful for how quickly our economic development team has worked to put this together. I'm really excited about the possibility of helping some of our folks here on the ground who've really been struggling and struggling to also help all of their employees in really unique ways. So thank you for your quick work on this. This is great.
Not only quick,
Pleasure.
but excellent. So
Yeah.
thank you. All right.
Got one just.
Councilor Knight?
I may have missed this in presentation. Different types of businesses, including nonprofits, as it were, is that technically are nonprofits, but they sometimes consider themselves businesses. Certified B Corp, for example, they're not nonprofits, but the way they deal with their finances. Is everybody any type of so-called business eligible, or is there a sort of limitation around that?
No, we've not outlined any carve-outs for, if you meet the criteria we talked about, 25% revenue loss, revenue 2.5 or less, can substantiate impact. We've not listed any, and neither have our implementing partners. If this moves forward and these two become our implementing partners, they too did not have carve-outs.
Thank you.
Councillor Melton and then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, so once this, I guess, is put in motion or stood up, will we put the information on our COVID page on the city website? I just want to have access to a link or something that I could help push out as well.
Absolutely. We will probably also just follow up with you for you to share with your networks as well, to council members' earlier point, to make sure our marketing is absolutely thorough, very diverse, very overreaching, in fact.
Hey, Councillor Martin.
Huge thank you again, as always, to staff. More importantly, I think to the mayor for getting this started and thinking through how to pull all of this together and getting us to this moment. I just want to note that in a city budget, this seems like a lot of money to me and a lot of money to us, maybe. I think that this money in this moment will go quickly. And so I just want to note for the community that we will do as a council as much as we can to continue to fill that bucket the best that we can. But for folks not to get discouraged if they don't make the first cut, that we are working as hard as we can. The mayor is working around the clock to get as much money into that pot as possible. And you all should be very proud of what she has done to make this possible. And that it is, it is not going to be perfect. But I think that in the nature of what we are trying to combat, this is the best that we are able to do at this moment. And I'm really proud of that. So thank you, Mayor Baldwin, for standing this up. I'm really proud to be a part of this team, and I'm proud to support this effort.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Martin, just as a follow-up to that, both organizations, one of the vetting criteria is that they are set up currently to receive matching or private dollars to support these efforts, and both are absolutely ready for that as well.
So, Councilor Martin, you did mention, working on this. I am really excited because I've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, and we have a call scheduled on Thursday to with about, I think, 40 of our corporate partners to discuss a matching grant. And I'm going to challenge them to match our $1 million. And it's going to be an ask, but I think if we put it in perspective, if 40 companies put in $25,000, that's our $1 million. And all of a sudden from 1 million, we have 2 million. The reach on that is a lot further. Our retail and restaurant community is part of what attracts talent here. People want to move to Raleigh because it's a fun place to live. They get to go to great restaurants. We have great greenway system and parks and whatnot. But this is all part of who we are and what I think, Veronica, you mentioned our cultural soul. And so I think our corporate community needs to be invested in that, and they'll be hearing that on Thursday. So my hope is that we will get an excellent response and match the $1 million that we're standing up. So thank you. And now we need a motion. Councillor Cox.
One final question. I got another device going here regarding sole proprietors. Can sole proprietors that don't have storefronts also apply?
It's a really good question. We did keep the storefront criteria. So if a sole proprietor is paying rent, even subletting or paying rent in a space that is not their home, that's what we're using to substantiate storefront.
Okay, so you do have to have a storefront in order to qualify for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve with the criteria that we've identified for Veronica? Counselor Stewart?
I move that we authorize city manager to enter into agreements with the partner organizations to administer a small business assistance program and authorize a budget amendment in the amount of $1 million to appropriate funding for the program with the qualifications we just put around it.
Counselor Wilson, second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? It is unanimous. Woo! I'm really, really proud. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I'll be even prouder when our business and corporate community comes and matches what we've done. We truly have come together to support our small business community. Awesome. Okay. I'm too excited to continue. The third item is our budget status and municipal revenues. This is a situation update. This is pretty serious stuff. Mary and Allison are here from our budget office to give us an update on where we are and what we might face in the upcoming month or two as we pull together our budget.
All right, so good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Allison Bradsher from our Finance Department, and to begin with, here's our agenda for today. I'll start with an overview of the economic snapshot. I'll then move into the FY20 General Fund financial picture, and then I'll turn it over to Mary Bigu to discuss the FY21 General Fund outlook. So there are many elements of the economy and associated impacts of COVID-19 that are affecting us on a personal level as well as the city's financial picture. I'll talk about 4 of those very briefly. We know that nationally there has been a significant job loss across the United States. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the total number of Americans who have filed initial jobless claims is around 22 million, or roughly 13.5% of the labor force since March 14th. The state's Division of Employment Security reports that just over 500,000 people here in North Carolina have filed unemployment claims. The national GDP, or the gross domestic product, which provides an economic snapshot and is used to estimate the size and growth of an economy, is estimated for the second quarter to be down between 20 to 30%. And there are lots of opinions on when GDP will stabilize and then begin to recover as we look into the future. And that leads us to consumer confidence, which we've seen a tremendous amount of market volatility and, in general, uncertainty around what life will look like for all of us. When will we return to eating in restaurants, attending concerts, as well as air travel for business or pleasure? And having said that, there are stimulus packages available and will certainly help, and we are learning about these packages on a personal level and how these relief packages will help the city's financial picture. We thought an overview to highlight the revenues that are most impacted by COVID-19 at this time would be helpful. For the general fund, it's primarily sales tax and user fees. For our convention center and performing arts, the 2 main revenue streams are the Wake County hospitality tax, which I provided in a summary in the manager's report last week, and we're moving forward with a plan to present a 22nd amendment in June, working with the county and other partners, and the user fees associated with the venues, and both of these are highly impacted. And finally, similar to sales tax, the transit tax here in Wake County will also be impacted. So we have provided this summary before, and it's a snapshot of the general fund revenues. And compared to other places in the country, our general fund revenues do have a good balance of revenues from multiple sources, with property taxes as our largest revenue source, which luckily remains pretty stable. So hopefully that provides an overview, and I'll jump into the current operating year and discuss our revenues that are most impacted by COVID-19. So this was our financial projection pre-COVID-19, and as you recall from your council retreat, I spoke about 3 revenue areas: property tax, sales tax, and a line item of other revenues, which are smaller revenues added into one line and include items like interest income, user fees for parks, and development services, to name a few. The city's revenues were projected to exceed the budget by $3 million. And as you can see, the first line, our property tax, was essentially right on budget, with the bulk of those revenues collected in December and January. And Raleigh has been experiencing strong sales tax results, and we're expecting to come in over $4 million, or about 4% better than budget. And at the same time, we were expecting a slight shortfall in our other revenues, totaling about $1 million. So when I add a new column for post-COVID-19, the revenue picture changes significantly, with overall revenues now in a shortfall when compared to budget by $8 million. Sales tax, which is our most volatile revenue, is now projected to swing $8 million, and instead of beating our budget, we will now fall below our budget by $4 million. Our teams have modeled many scenarios and consulted with peers across North Carolina, and while these figures seem to be very precise, I do want to stress how fluid things are, and depending on policy decisions and consumer confidence, our figures will change. The other line item for discussion today in the general fund that is most impacted is our parks and recreation user fees for our programs, which we expect revenue disruption of approximately $3 million. So as we look at our reserves, which we're proud to say we operate and budget conservatively as a AAA-rated city, however, there will be pressures on the general fund reserves given the circumstances. With the expected revenue declines that I spoke about on the previous chart, coupled with the fact that the city early on took a position to implement premium pay for our frontline employees, which was not something we had previously budgeted. So while a positive step for our employees, it negatively impacts our financials around $2 to $2.5 million, which will impact any current year budget underruns within our expense structure. So in order to minimize the use of fund balance in the current year, the city has taken 3 steps, which are shown on the chart, and include a review of non-essential contractual spending, a hiring freeze for non-mission critical positions, and the halting of business travel. We are working closely with budget as well as the departments to understand the impacts that these items will have on our current year expense structure. So if you give me a second, I'll turn it over to Mary Bighue for the FY21 budget discussion.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. I'm Mary Bighue from Budget Management Services. I wanted to start off today with a reminder of what we presented at City Council's retreat. In February, we were looking at roughly a $3 to $6 million budget gap, and we were very early in budget development. The preliminary budget included base pay increases and other mandated increases like the city's contribution to the state's retirement system, and the increased costs associated with our health insurance. The budget we presented in February did not include any service enhancements or growth pressures. As we try to understand the economic impact of our current environment and adapt our fiscal year 21 budget development process, we worked with finance and internal departments to model possible scenarios based on our changing reality. As Allison mentioned earlier, we are constantly monitoring economic impacts and what experts at leading financial institutions are predicting in terms of how long the economic impact may last and how quickly the economy may recover. We also looked at our historic trends, especially at how Raleigh fared during the recession in 2008 to 2010. This chart shows 3 scenarios, with the main variable being the length of the impact. These scenarios help ensure we are directionally correct with our decision-making process as we determine how to address our base budget. So this slide highlights our current revenue estimates for fiscal year 21. I'd like to note that we are continually working on our models as we learn and understand the data better, and so these are draft estimates. We did receive updated revaluation numbers from Wake County, so you'll see a slight increase there from our original projections in February. The models all assume a revenue-neutral property tax rate. It's important to highlight sales tax, and so when we look at it, the model reflects a 2 to 6% reduction from where we think we are going to end fiscal year 20. The optimistic model reflects a 1% overall reduction from our current year budget, and the pessimistic model reflects a 3% overall reduction. The moderate is approximately a 1.9% reduction, and that budget is almost equal to our fiscal year 19 adopted budget, so going back a few years. So as we look at our overall base on our revised projected revenues, we have estimated our gap to be between 23 and 34 million. Our base budget includes all associated increases that we shared at City Council's retreat and does not include any budget balancing strategies. And so it's important to understand that those expenditures are just our starting point. So as we mentioned in the memo that went out prior to today's meeting, the city manager has identified some principles to guide our work through this process. As mandated by state law, we will present a balanced budget that maintains our greatest asset, which is our workforce. While we are reviewing our capital improvement program, we will avoid relying solely on deferring our capital maintenance programs to balance the budget. So based on that new reality, staff is working on a variety of strategies in order for us to present a balanced budget in May. We are looking at continuing the non-essential hiring freeze into fiscal year 21. Budget has also asked that each department review their programs and operations and submit items for possible reductions. Staff continues to review overall city expenditures for possible efficiencies and changes. And we are also working with departments to review the capital improvement program for potential savings through projects that either have been completed with savings or that we could possibly delay. This slide is just a reminder for City Council and the community of our various enterprise funds that will be included in our fiscal year 21 proposed budget. We are working with staff in each of those areas to understand any impacts on revenues or expenditures that they anticipate experiencing next year. We will include these areas in our proposed budget presentation next month. So our next steps include continuing to revise our revenue estimates and work on developing a balanced budget for Council's consideration. The City Manager will present the proposed budget on May 19th, and the public hearing is scheduled for June 2nd. And Council will begin their budget work sessions on June 1st. And we are here to answer any questions that Council may have.
Well, thank you. That's a very sobering look at our new reality. Having been on the council during the Great Recession, I can tell you that governing in a recession is not fun. We're very limited in any new programs that we can bring forward. We will be facing, as we said, a hiring freeze while trying to prevent any layoffs and doing this with the goal of not raising taxes. So our budget hearings are going to be very different from what we may have anticipated when we were elected. But this is the situation we are now faced with. And we are in a recession, and we are facing a recession budget. So during the hearings, I want everybody to just kind of keep that in mind, because this is and will be our new reality for the upcoming year. What I would suggest that we focus on is one of the things that I think will be one of the most important actions we take this year, and that is the passage of a housing affordability bond. Details will be coming to us on that, but there's so much we can do to move that forward. It's housing affordability and housing choices are also going to be one of the most important things just because of that new reality. This will be needed now more than ever. So we can, despite the budget, we can still accomplish a lot on the housing front, and I don't want us to lose focus on that. So with that said, does anybody have any questions for Mary or Allison? Or is everybody too in shock to say anything?
Nah, just.
Councillor Cox and then Councillor Buffkin.
I just want to get some clarity on when we will see specifics about what's being proposed. I really don't want to have to wait until another month, more than a month, before we get specifics.
Mayor, I'll answer that. Mr. Cox, we will be sharing with you information as soon as it becomes available. We are in the process of soliciting responses from all the departments now about ways that they are going to help manage and bring this together. And so it's not possible to bring forward pieces of it until we know which things we're going to come together. So we'll continue to share information with you. At this point, our plan is to present the balanced budget on May the 19th.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to the staff for this presentation. It is sobering indeed. I'm looking ahead to the meeting on the enterprise funds, and I am anticipating a major issue in our utility funds, and this is not unique to Raleigh. Utilities all over the state are going to be facing this shortly, and that is similar to our premium pay. It was the right thing to do for the employees that have to come to work, but it has a budget impact. Over on Raleigh Water side, we have done the right thing for the people of this community that are struggling by deferring disconnects and waiving late fees and so forth. But there's going to be a budget impact, particularly for cash flow reasons, and for the folks who are hit the hardest by this crisis. They may never be able to pay their past bills. So do you think when that enterprise, my question then is for the enterprise fund presentation, do you think by next month we'll have an idea of how certain and how big that impact might be?
So, yes, we're already working with the enterprise funds to understand the impact. Raleigh Water is actually, I don't want to say they're in a great place because all of us are still working through this and understanding, but due to their, as Allison mentioned, we are very conservative in how we budget. And so I would anticipate Raleigh Water will come forward and be able to explain the impact that this has had on them. But we are doing our best to make sure that we're not impacting homeowners through major changes in rates. And, we talked about the property tax already, the mayor did. So we're continuing to work through that.
Councillor Brandt.
And I just want to make sure Councilman Buffkin's aware too that Raleigh Water has a payment plan set up that it already exists. So if those that have issues with bills later on, they can work with Raleigh Water on, working through those challenges. And that's something that, we can probably make sure that is up to date and current. But I just want to make you aware of that. And others, also those in the community, aware of the payment plan that Raleigh Water does have in place, that's been in place for a number of years to help residents with their water bills and their utilities.
Councilor Martin was next, and then Councilor Melton.
I just want to sort of get clarification from staff that as we look past when we would adopt this balanced budget, it appears that there is very likely the opportunity for COVID-19 to rebound, potentially a second and or third time with various waves into 2020 and 2021, depending. And that obviously is going to have significant economic impacts as well, which means that our job of balancing the budget doesn't stop after we pass this budget. So you all can present a budget on May 19th, and we can pass a balanced budget. I would assume, though, that we are going to need to be nimble and flexible throughout the next year, the next fiscal year, to meet the needs of the various departments and needs of the community, depending on the virus and how it rebounds in the state and in the city. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, that's why there's 3 different models. So some of that looks at the rebounding and whether we would go back into, a stay-at-home order or whether we would not. And so that's why some of them are extreme. I think going into next year, we need to understand where there are potential savings in the budget mid-year if we needed to make them if revenue did not come through. So let's, for example, if Allison and I realized in December that sales tax actually did worse than we initially projected, are there things in our budget that we could hold the line on in the spring? So things like that. So we'll continually over the next, even after adoption, watch this and understand the impact it's having. Because the environment is changing so much on a daily and weekly basis. So yes, it is an ongoing review.
Well, thank you for what you're doing to monitor that every day. I appreciate it.
And we had Councilor Melton, was that correct? And Councilor
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that I agree it's not pretty, the numbers we're looking at, but I do feel very confident that we will be prepared. And so whatever the challenge will be, we will get through it. And I appreciate the comments about being nimble and adaptable. And I appreciate the work that you have done to gather this information. I think this is a piece that folks get worried about. And I know that we'll be making decisions based on the best information we have. And I appreciate it.
Councilor Cox.
Regarding property tax revenue, are we encountering any individuals who might be having difficulty paying their property tax as a result of this? And I know we anticipate, what the valuation, based on the valuation is, but are we really going to be able to collect all that property tax? And will there be individuals that can't pay it?
So I don't know if Ruffin wants to chime in as well, but the city manager, currently property tax was due in January. So for current year, we've actually received most of the revenue associated with property tax. For next year, we are looking at our collection rate and have slightly reduced it a little bit, which would impact us, but not a major impact in terms of our revenue collected from property. Property tax, even during the recession, historically was a very stable revenue for us, and that's in most communities. And so we don't anticipate major swings in collection for property tax.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I would propose that might be an assumption that we want to keep an eye on because of the different nature of this situation.
Yeah, if I could just add, Mr. Cox, that is something that Allison and Mary and ourselves are looking at with Wake County Tax Office and gone back and looked at. Again, what you're speaking to really is the collection rate. It's the same thing Mr. Buffkin was referring to in the utilities fund. And we are looking at a potential minor adjustment in the collection rate to account for that. But even in the recessionary periods, that collection rate adjustment is still usually less than 1%. Just mostly because how that's connected to mortgage and mortgage payments. So even when it's more difficult, people tend to pay that first. And so we will be making an adjustment there to account for that, looking at historical trends when we've been in a down economy.
Okay, and Counselor Knight, you had your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Capital projects, capital expenses, capital outlay that we've already approved, is not being through this process before. Is there a way to have another look at those if they have not actually been spent, or the funds haven't been used yet for, I guess, through in this current budget?
So that's part of the process we're currently under in terms of the CIP. We're looking at projects that either have already been completed and where they're saving, are there projects that have not been started, and how are they prioritized with other projects that we wanted to potentially start next year. And so all of that is being reviewed. So to answer your question, Councilmember, yes, we're looking at projects that the funding may have even been approved 2 or 3 years ago in the CIP process.
Good. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much. I think we told you that excellent work, but also we have full confidence in where we're headed and in your ability to help guide us there. So thank you. All right, our fourth and final item is the Unified Development Ordinance, rezoning procedures and virtual neighborhood meetings. And we have Bynum and Robin, who will be briefing us on this. Bynum, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm going to kick it off very quickly and then turn it over to Bynum. As you know, the UDO for private applicants to file a rezoning application and neighborhood meeting is required. And under a recent UDO amendment, a second meeting is also required in some circumstances before the application can get to the Planning Commission. With the implementation of the emergency declaration, stay-at-home orders, executive orders, and the like, as well as the risks that come about from large gatherings because of the COVID-19 crisis, these meetings are not practical or really an available option at this time. So we've had a lot of inquiries about whether that we could have a virtual neighborhood meeting option, the same as we're doing these meetings remotely or by different web platforms. The planning department, with some assistance from our office, has come up with a plan to have virtual neighborhood meetings. We believe that this is consistent with the UDO and takes into account all of the purposes of the various stay-at-home orders and the like. That document, which is entitled Temporary Option for Virtual Neighborhood Meetings, is in the backup in the board docs. I am going to turn it over to Bynum to sort of go over the highlights and answer any questions. We just wanted to bring this in front of you so everybody could understand it, make comments and ask questions. We do not believe a UDO amendment is needed, but we just need a process, which again is in this document. And with that, I will turn it over to Bynum.
Thank you, Robin. Bynum Walter, Raleigh Planning and Development. Specifically today, I'm representing the rezoning program. What we have put together is a temporary measure that would be in place only while in-person gatherings are restricted. All the requirements of the UDO still apply, but it sets up some guidelines to allow for a virtual meeting option for neighborhood meetings before rezoning cases are filed and also preceding Planning Commission review. And so what we have done is set up guidelines that really try to strike the balance between keeping business moving to let the city business continue and also trying to honor and engage our community as best as we can during this time. So the guidance sets forward particular timeframes and requirements for the meetings. They have to be accessible only by phone, trying to make them more accessible to more citizens. We were concerned that a video conference option only would really exclude some folks. And then also requiring a longer meeting time to allow for technical difficulties, to allow for those to be ironed out. Of course, those meetings can't happen on holidays. And then asking that the applicants mail more information directly to neighbors so that if you are participating by phone, you can follow what's happening, understand what's being discussed, and see what folks in the virtual meeting might be looking at also. So a heavier mailing request of the applicant, but really that's to facilitate them being able to have a virtual meeting. And then some reporting requirements that are very much in line with what's already in the UDO, but recognizing that because the circumstances are different, just setting up some guidelines about what we would like for that to look like so that we're all on the same page. What questions can I answer for you about what's been proposed here?
Any questions?
I just want to thank staff for working to put something together for anyone that wants to move their project forward and have these meetings. You know, they have to make sure that the residents have the information, materials, so that they can fully participate. So I definitely want to say thank you for that. And I see there's a question, so I'll stop there.
Councilor Melton?
It's not a question. I was just going to say that I think that so long as we can get input from the community, the fact that folks continue to want to invest in our city is great. And so whatever we can do to keep that investment coming, even during times like this, where we're in uncertain times, I think that is good, and we need to push this forward as quickly as we can so that the good work of the city can continue.
Thank you. Councilor Buffkin, and then Councilor Stewart, and then Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd echo the comments of Mr. Melton there. It's my sense that we're moving into a new phase of this crisis, and I think the work that we're doing here to keep the city government functioning is going to help us recover. You know, in some cases, it's, you know, whether it's a decision whether people are going to be building things in January or February of next year, depends on whether they can get decisions from their city government in the coming months. And so I think this is going to be very important. I appreciate the staff putting the work in to structure this appropriately and facilitate our city government continuing to make decisions.
Thank you. Councilor Martin?
I just, one question as it relates to expanding access, and I'm glad to see that, you know, we're ensuring that folks can access via phone to ensure that they are able to visually connect with the project as well and all the intricacies that might be involved. Is there a way to connect the presentation that would be presented online with RTN and making sure that it was presented through the RTN TV channel, so that when the mailing goes out, people can say, if you can't watch this via Zoom or online, if you have access to a TV, you can, you know, go to this channel and watch as well and call in. Just something to take into consideration. I know always program that specifically, but I think in this moment, with not everyone having access or feeling comfortable using a smartphone in the way that a lot of us are comfortable using it, it would be great to use as many resources we have to, you know, push this out and to make sure that folks have access. That might be an absolute no. I have no idea how RTN works. I'm owning that, but just an idea to throw out there.
Yeah, I cannot speak for RTN, but I can certainly follow up with Raleigh Communications, and we can explore options there. I think most of the video conference options that applicants would employ would allow for the meeting to be recorded, and we could certainly work with communications to see if we could make those available in some way. Okay. I of course, would ask them about that. Again, I have no idea if that's feasible.
Sure. And I think the ideal goal would be for it to be, when it's being live streamed, that it could also be on RTN so that folks could call in with live comments at the same time. But anything we could do to have access and feedback would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Stewart.
Thank you. I just want to appreciate the inclusion of making sure that this is a two-way conversation that happens between neighbors and the developers. I think that's a really important point that folks hear. In addition, I do want to say I'm really excited about this opportunity to try some virtual meetings. I think it brings access to this point of our city work in new ways and to new communities. And so I don't think we should necessarily just throw it out when we're done, but rather learn from it and see how to move forward afterward. But I really appreciate y'all's quick work on this. So thank you.
Anything else? Okay, Robin, you don't need a vote on this. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, we do not need to vote on this. We just wanted to bring it forward, make sure everyone understands, and get your feedback and questions. And I think we have that.
Yeah, there seems to be consensus that this is a positive move, and I'm excited to see how it can be employed in the future, broadening the base of people we reach. So thank you, everybody. All right, so that was the last item on the agenda. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Councilor Stewart, then Councilor Cox, then Councilor Branch.
I just wanted to make sure that folks know about another great opportunity to support our small business community. We have Black Dollar in our community, which is a kind of online Rolodex for the Black business community. And they've started up a new nonprofit called Raleigh 19, which is supporting the Raleigh Community Groomers Fund. So this is an opportunity for our folks who want to help continue to give back to our community to support our barbershops, our hair salons, our nail salons, massage therapists, folks who've been completely shut down and aren't able to make income at all right now because of COVID, and so they help us keep our community safe. So I'll send out stuff on that, but just wanted to share that opportunity and thank that community for lifting up that fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cox?
Yes, I just wanted to share that I saw recently that Buncombe County has on their website the ability for people to self-report their exposure to COVID-19. And that information is being used to inform their first responders, their police and fire, when they go to some location in response to an emergency call. I was wondering if we could do the same thing where we could provide an opportunity for people to self-report, create a profile, and self-report as part of that profile any exposure to COVID-19. That way, when firefighters and police go on an emergency call, they would have that information in front of them. It would not be information that is publicly out there, but it would be something that can inform our first responders.
Certainly, Mr. Cox. We basically already do that through our 911 call center. So right now, every call that comes into 911, when they're reporting something to receive a response, the call takers now, as a part of their script, ask them questions about their medical situations and the potential exposure to COVID-19. So, but I'll be happy to have the staff look into the Buncombe County model to see if that's a different iteration of what we're currently doing, and happy to talk to Wake County about that if that's something that could be helpful.
Yeah, if they
we're already filtering for that, yeah.
Yeah, one advantage of implementing something like that is if a person is incapacitated and can't provide that information.
Yeah, sure. Sure, I will be happy to look into it and consult with Wake County. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I've noticed that a lot of communities are providing more granular information about COVID-19 exposures. A lot of states, for example, the state of New Mexico, the state of Arizona, the state of Florida, they're breaking cases down in terms of zip code, number by zip code. as are like the County of San Diego, the City of Detroit, the City of St. Louis, Allegheny County, which encompasses Pittsburgh. They're all doing the same, and I just wanted to ask that we pass that along to Wake County and the state to see if it might be possible to get some more granularity in terms of the data and reporting that is being presented.
The Wake mayors have asked for that information, and we do have a meeting on that on Thursday.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cox. Two good points there. Councillor Branch.
Yes, actually, Councillor Stewart kind of hit the point I was going to make. The site is Raleigh19.com. In which they're working to raise to help those that keep us nice and trim. As you all see, as an example, I'm feeling the effects of COVID-19 and not having that aspect of it. But a lot of them, this is their living. So if there's anyone that can go out and help, this is another group, another organization. It's a nonprofit, registered nonprofit, 501c3, that's trying to help those who are now lacking income because of COVID-19. So whatever we can do to assist them, I definitely want to share that message. And I thank you, Mayor, for mentioning what the Council of Mayors have been meeting to discuss about getting more granular information. I think that is very important as we continue to work. And the last thing I want to say is that we're all in this together. Let's take this community aspect that's coming together and not let it end when COVID-19 ends. Let's continue to work together as a city across all lines and groups. And just remember, we're in this together. So I look forward to continuing to serve with my fellow council members. Thank you to the city staff for you all that are out there. I know a lot of you're working from home now. We don't get to see your smiling faces here in the building, but I just want to let you know that your work is not unnoticed. Thank you, and thank you to our first responders. You're out there in the middle of it every day, still responding to 911 calls and ask needs of assistance. So this is just my way. I just want to say it is noticed, and we appreciate all that you do.
Anyone else? Councilor Branch, I think you echoed what we're all thinking in terms of thanking those who are on the front lines fighting this. It's very much appreciated. I did want to note, though, that you and Councilor Knight might be in competition for who needs a hairstylist more.
I'll let him lead the way.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for participating today. To everybody who is watching, thank you for tuning in. Again, thank you to staff for the great work on our small business grant fund, and also, just everything that we heard today. But I say this every meeting, but I'm going to say it again. Be kind, and be kind. Thank you.